This living lesson is called Seeing Shadows. I don't think I've been as excited or just wanting so much to share a principle as this one. And the reason is I just think so many of us just need to hear the truth in it. I'm going to lay a foundational principle that you may or may not have heard. Our ministry uses it quite a bit. It goes way back to earlier days, years and years ago, when we started collecting several, daughter-in-laws and son-in-laws and different people coming into the family. And I wanted with all my heart to love them as my own children. But because they're not my children and I don't know them well, and all of us, and I mean all of us, have things in our life and the way that we act that are often based on something that has happened when we were younger, or even in a marriage, or we all go through things, and because of that, we may not act or do things in the way that pleases everyone. But what we wanted to be able to do is to take a principle, and it really came because I asked my husband, how can I love this person the way that I want to, and to do that. And he brought me to a scripture that is actually intended and written in the Bible for husbands in loving their wives. And I thought, well, if women are a weaker vessel, then shouldn't we all want to love her in that understanding way? So the verse is in 1 Peter, and it says that, husbands, love your wives, but it says, live with them in an understanding way as with a weaker vessel, since she is a woman, and grant her honor as a special heir of the grace of life, that your prayers may not be hindered. Now, I believe, it's my own belief, it's not written there because I just quoted that to you, and you could look it up, that they're talking to husbands. But I believe that any of us that either work with, that's what we do in our ministry, we work with everyone in an understanding way, as with a weaker vessel, because 99.9% of who we work with are women. And we want to grant her honor. We know that she is, worthy of that. She's his bride as well. Whether our prayers are hindered or not, well, I don't think that if we're unkind that, God looks favorably on that. But let's just get to the understanding. The only way to understand someone is to know them and to know their past. But it's not a matter of asking the person or talking to them. It's really taking it to your husband, who knows that other person through and through, knows everything more than they know about themselves. And he'll tell you just what you need to know in order to understand and to have empathy and understanding and kindness and love for that person. So I did this with one of that married into the family, who I absolutely love dearly, but there was one thing that made me pull back a little bit. And once my husband explained it and reminded me of something that I don't know that I remembered it totally changed everything. I just had compassion and kindness and love. And so I ultimately ended up sharing it with my daughter and some other daughter-in-laws so that they understood, and they also began to love, this person too. Now, I wasn't sharing something, it was when they came to me, because that's not our place to do that, but just as my husband prompted. But what I found is that it works, taking it to your husband and loving that person and living with them, working with them, dealing with them in an understanding way. And it doesn't only apply to women. children all the time. I remember so much that I would be heartbroken when I saw a mother being upset with their child, when you could just tell they were tired or they were hungry, or they'd been fed too much sugar and they didn't understand, and treating them in that understanding way. And I think that that's so much what, the Lord wants us to do as our husband. He wants us as his brides to be representing him, certainly as believers. So I shared all this recently with a family member who, it seemed that every time that we started to talk, there were issues and trouble with another family member. And I think all of us can relate to that, right? And it just seemed like every time this person's name came up or a situation came up, all of this bitterness and just harshness and just unkind, or sometimes it would be cutting. And it wasn't, they didn't mean to do that. They were hurt, and this other person had hurt them. And so this, cycle just went on. What I wanted more than anything is not just to be a peacemaker. That used to be my role in our family. But it wasn't that at all. It was just, I didn't want this particular family member to go through any more hurts. I recently shared that my sister's going through health issues. And so she's in my life and I've been able to minister to her. And so I particularly wanted to make sure that she was healing in every way, in her heart, in her body. If you're not at ease, you're dis-ease. And she just did not need that anymore. And so I saw that even though that we'd talked at length, that she had forgiven her, and every time that it came up, she said, "I've forgiven," and she would cry, and you could tell it was sincere. It wasn't put on. Yes, I've forgiven. But still there was still something was just missing. And so I went to my husband again. I said, what can I share, or help me to understand it? Why is it that she forgives, but still this is going on? And the story, or not necessarily the story, but the vision, or what I began to see, is what I just shared with her. And she said, "Oh, please, you're more than welcome to share me, share this, mention me is fine." And so what I wanted to share is, and it comes from the title, Seeing Shadows. Well, my sister, that I've been ministering to and enjoying very much, her coming to know the Lord as her husband. She's listening to love songs. She's sending me love songs and the lyrics. She told me yesterday she spent an entire hour just having this wonderful time with the Lord, and that she felt like she was wrapped in this blanket and comforter of love that she's never experienced before. And it was on the eve of her having surgery, which happened today. And so I couldn't be more delighted. And yet I was concerned because there were issues with a family member, that we both have had issues. And quite frankly, probably everyone in the family has had issues, because this one individual has been repeatedly and horribly hurt in her life. And so she doesn't act appropriately. And though it's not intentional anyway, so this is what I heard from my husband and I shared with my sister. And it's interesting because he used my sister's dog, which I didn't know until just days before this revelation came up, that she's an older dog, and she is actually blind in one eye. And she told me that when she takes the dog out or at a dog park, sometimes she jumps at and lunges out and not actually attacks, but starts to attack, the dog in defense because she's blind in one eye. She sees shadows, and those shadows are what frighten her. And this is what my husband said. This family member is blind in an eye, half blind, probably blinded in pain and suffering that she's had to go through. And because of that, she's constantly seeing these shadows, and her reaction to those is to lunge out and to, try and attack, or really actually attack. But that it doesn't mean anything there. It's not, once she realizes, the dog, she's repentive, and she doesn't mean to do it. And our family member in the same way doesn't mean anything by it. And I think that goes for a lot of those people in our life. They might be blind with pain or suffering or nothing. The only way we're going to know what they're suffering, what they've been through, is to go to your husband and ask, help me to love this person. Help me to see this person. Help me to understand what they've been through and why they are the way that they are. And with that understanding, you'll be able to love them in a beautiful way. And it's not until we love them with the love that he's given us that they even have a hope of being healed and having a happy life. And that's what we want for everyone, right? And so we need to come to him, to ask him, and to remember that, they very well may be seeing shadows. They may lunge out. They may attack. But if we love them in an understanding way, as with a weaker vessel, whether they're a woman or they're just weaker in age, weaker in spiritually because they've made a shipwreck of their morals, anything, we can find that and then tap into that and start to love them in that way. So I hope this helps you. If it has, and you have a comment, a testimony, please share it in the comments below so that we can minister to more and more women who may not be able to relate to what I'm saying, but they will be able to relate to what you're saying, because remember, it's the testimonies that help us to overcome, along with him and what he's done for us. So thank you for listening.